Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this special bonus episode of Spolitics. I call it a bonus live because I am doing this also live on YouTube right now. But don't worry, if you have not been able to catch it on YouTube, this will be available on iHeart. This is the final episode for this season of Spolitics, a season that I am extremely proud of. And this is sort of the season ender. Now, I hate that this season is sort of ending in this way, just based off the subject of what I'm going to talk about today. This has been quite the week for a lot of people, and it's been marred by a lot of tragedy, marred by a lot of senselessness. This has just been a exceptionally emotional time for all of us that are living right now. And so, by that, of course, I'm referring to the school shooting that happened in Colorado, also referring to the unfortunate and tragic murder of Charlie Kirk. And even not even 24 hours ago, as of the recording of this, we had another shooting incident at a naval yard. So violence seems to be all around us, but we can pretend as if that's unique. But unfortunately, this is kind of every day in America. But I want to, of course, start with talking about Charlie Kirk for a number of reasons. Charlie Kirk is somebody who gained a lot of fame, a lot of influence. He's one of the most prominent conservative influencers. He was shot and killed at Utah Valley State in what was, um, as much as we may have been accustomed to violence in this country, to see something like that, and especially if you were online. And unfortunately, a lot of us, we did see some of the more really stark and horrible visuals that came from what happened to him. Um, it was certainly, again, something that you can't unsee, something that is etched in your brain to see somebody murdered in such a violent and horrible way. And especially at a time in our country where everything feels so divisive and feels so volatile, Charlie Kirk, as he was known to do, was at Utah Valley State to engage with students, as he, again, is known to do as the co founder of Turning Point USA. His influence in the right wing space cannot be overstated. Like, he's one of the primary right wing influencers who helped Donald Trump deliver, or he helped deliver the young conservative vote to Donald Trump, especially when it came to young white men. And so to see somebody just murdered in that fashion, it was really, um, it was really devastating. And I feel like I'm not even putting that into words correctly. And so, of course, now many of you have heard the news. The latest is that they have apprehended the suspect. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, I believe that is his name. Uh, his father turned him in because he told his father that he had committed this horrible crime, and he has since been arrested. And for Charlie Kirk's family, for those who loved him, I'm sure that gives them a sense of peace, although nothing obviously can replace a human being. Uh, but at least there is some level of justice that will be there for the Kirk family and for those who loved him. Now, of course, in the days since, there have been a lot of discourse. There has been a lot of anger, and not anger in the sense, obviously, of what happened to Charlie Kirk, but also a lot of anger between both the left, both the right, the left and right, I should say. Anger kind of bubbling all around the situation for a variety of reasons. Um, and I think especially at this time, we and it was why I took a few days before I even wanted to say anything really publicly of substance. It's interesting to me, as just a slight side note as I go further, that there are legions of people who tell me all the time, and I think you know who these people are, who tell me all the time about how my opinion doesn't matter, about how I'm I'm irrelevant, I'm all these things, and yet they're blowing up all my social media feeds because they want to know all of a sudden, what do I think about what happened to Charlie Kirk? Well, first and foremost, I think what happened to him was terrible. And beyond that, I'm thinking about his young children, his wife, and the fact that his young children one day, just with a quick Google search, just by going on YouTube, that they are going to see in Technicolor what happened to their father. And that's something I wouldn't wish on anybody. Now, all that being said, there has been a startling different reaction among communities about how to properly put into context who Charlie Kirk was, what his cultural placement was, and for that matter, to discuss what he believed and try to discuss this in a manner in which is truthful, but also respectful. And just in the aftermath already, we have seen a number of people lose their jobs over what they have said about Charlie Kirk. Now, some of the reasons that people have lost their jobs, frankly, I have an issue with. Some of them, I kind of understand why they did. And I want people to be able to approach this awful, tragic thing that happened with a little bit, not a little bit, I shouldn't even say a little bit, with a lot of nuance, because that is what this requires. Now, I'm sure you all know, if you follow me for any length of time, that you know some of my positions, political, social, cultural positions. There is nothing at all I had in common with Charlie Kirk. Not one thing, other than we're both human beings. That was it. Our political views, our social views, our cultural views, our religious views were completely opposite. And obviously, just on a human level, what happened to him, despite our intense levels of being on opposite sides of things, and I thought that he pretty much was on the wrong side of history with everything he said. Despite all that, I have enough compassion and sense to understand why what happened to him was wrong, and why that needs to be a serious wake-up call for this country in a lot of ways, and not just related to his unfortunate murder, or not just about the gun violence part of it. The gun violence part, to me, is obvious. Like, clearly America has a problem with gun violence. Within hours of this happening to Charlie Kirk, the shooting that happened in Colorado, where young people lost their lives yet again, which is it is a staple in this country, that children go to school and they can't feel safe. That has become a complete staple in this country. And so we know the pervasiveness of the gun problem in this country. And so that's one layer of it. The other layer of it is our divisive politics. And I'm putting politics in air quotes. And for those who are listening to the audio version of this on iHeart and can't see it, yes, I put up the two fingers with both of my hands. I put politics in air quotes because while we can certainly be appalled at what happened to Charlie Kirk, as I am, as many are, I think there needs to be a serious conversation about what legacy means in this moment. And what I have seen is that there has been a real sanitizing effect about Charlie Kirk's influence in our culture. And I'm going to try to say this as respectfully as I can. And I want people to really hear me, because we have this odd way of not understanding how to process multiple things at once. We know how to process multiple things at once. It's just sometimes we choose not to. I am appalled at what happened to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be murdered. He did not deserve to lose his family. His family didn't deserve to lose him, his wife, his friends, his loved ones. Nobody deserved that. I want to be unequivocally clear about this. But that being said, I'm not going to lie about Charlie Kirk's legacy. I'm not going to lie about his impact, and I'm not going to certainly gloss over and sanitize the things that he said. And it seems like in this moment where people have the right to mourn, but people also have the right to not mourn. And if you notice, there's a lot of Black people who aren't exactly mourning. They're not celebrating, but they're not certainly going to mourn. And we have seen this sometimes when complicated figures die. The most recent example I could think of was Queen Elizabeth. Certainly, there was a nation, a global world, a global community that mourned the loss of Queen Elizabeth. But there were people, especially Africans, who did not mourn the passing of Queen Elizabeth. And what we need to do in this moment is give people the right to mourn or to reflect or to put this incident in perspective however they want to. And I think what is annoying or at least rankling a lot of people, especially Black folks, is that they're being villainized, or not even just Black folks. I'm not just going to limit this to a conversation about Black and white. There are a lot of people who didn't just disagree with Charlie Kirk, but were just vehemently opposed to some of the things that he said. And it's like people are trying to force them into feeling a way that they don't. Again, we can all agree that this was murder and it was terrible and it's something that should never happen in our country. But don't force people to feel something that they don't feel, especially when Charlie Kirk did real damage with his words, real damage. And while some people say, or they have this mentality, or at least, their own compass tells them, hey, you shouldn't talk ill of the dead. I guess. I mean, the thing is, if I go, I want y'all to tell the truth about me, whatever that truth may be. And I'm fine with that. And so, like, seeing people being villainized and castigated because they don't want to celebrate Charlie Kirk, I think is really, in its own way, being insensitive. Because, listen, if there is a reluctance, especially in Black America, to at all celebrate Charlie Kirk, or at all, celebrate and mourn Charlie Kirk, there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, his own words are a big reason. Some of the things that he has said about Black Americans, like if I read you guys this list, and I told you this very same person was somebody that they lowered the flags for, somebody that got a moment of silence at the Thursday night Packers Washington Commanders game, somebody who, who the lawmakers are talking about lying in state. People, if I said this to somebody and then I read his words without telling you who he was, you probably would think I was insane for saying it. Case in point, this is just some of the things that Charlie Kirk said. If I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. If you're a WNBA pot-smoking Black lesbian, you get treated better than a United States Marine. He was, of course, referring to Brittany Griner when she was detained in Russia. Happening all the time in urban America, prowling Blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic Black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? If I would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called racist. Now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. These are Charlie Kirk's own words. So why are you badgering people about whether or not they mourn Charlie Kirk. And I think it's completely fair when you remember somebody, whether it be Charlie Kirk, anybody who it is completely fair for you to consider the totality of their legacy and not just the parts that you liked or not just the parts that make the person look better. So this sanitizing of trying to reinvent Charlie Kirk as just a vigilant Christian who fought for political speech and who was just a political activist, that's not right, because that is not all he was, and that is not all he said, and that was not his only impact. Yes, of course, he did galvanize young white conservative voters. That was one part of it, but it's how he galvanized them and what he said to galvanize them that also matters, because context matters in terms of who you are as a person. Context matters in terms of how people remember you. And so when I think about the fact that MSNBC fired political analyst Matthew Dowd because he surfaced some of the things that Charlie Kirk said, and he also talked about the complications of his legacy, that, yeah, he was a very influential person in those circles, but he also gained and created that influence off a lot of really awful and hateful rhetoric. Need I remind you, as we're having this discussion about what's allowable when somebody dies or when something bad happens to you, need I remind you of what Charlie Kirk, what he said about Nancy Pelosi's husband when he was attacked in their home?
And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions. And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions.
Now, I played that twice just because I wanted to make sure that you all heard what he said. Now, that was his response to after Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked by somebody who, by the way, was a Trump supporter. And didn't seem like a whole lot of empathy there or sympathy. Kind of seemed like he was making light of somebody else who could have been killed by a home intruder. And what I've said this to other people before, and never before has it really been more perfect to say now. The empathy you deny will be the empathy that you need one day. I promise you that. And that is why I try to certainly carry myself and have empathy and compassion. I'm not perfect, not in all situations. And I think some people, frankly, don't deserve it. But I will say that one of the responsibilities that come with having a really big pedestal and having a really big platform is that you have to be very cognizant about what your words mean, how they matter, and how they influence. And I think Charlie Kirk was very aware of how his words mattered, what they meant, and how they influenced. And he was fine with how they did. So in response, we should be fine with being able to repeat those same words when we're thinking about the totality of his legacy. Because there were problematic things that he did and said. What he said about Black people, what he said about women, what he said about those in the queer community. He said a lot of very problematic, disgusting, and despicable things about all of those communities. And the reason he was labeled a white supremacist is because he believed in the superiority of white people, which is why he said that he would be concerned if he saw a Black pilot, which is why he said that he questioned the brain processing of brilliant minds such as Joy Ann Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson, because he ultimately believed in the superiority of white people. So I don't think I'm being insensitive by bringing that up. And the only reason I feel like I even need to bring that up is because of the counter narrative that is establishing itself. And that's the problem with history and the problem with receipts, is that you can't erase the receipts. You can't, I learned this a long time ago, and I'm sure you guys have heard this before, is that people don't remember what you do, although a lot of times they do, but more importantly, they remember how you made them feel. And Charlie Kirk, with his words and with his influence, he made a lot of people who were not straight white Christian men feel less than human, feel less than qualified, feel a lot of less thans. That's how he made them feel. And that was his entire purpose. So we have room in our big old brains for multiple thoughts, for being upset and angry about what happened to Charlie Kirk, because it says a lot about our political discourse in this moment, but also being reflective enough to surface what also made him somebody whose influence was dangerous in a lot of respect and contributed to the political atmosphere in which we're living now. And before before I sort of move on to a few other things that were on my mind as I thought about this entire tragic incident, I'm tired of white supremacist beliefs being considered a difference of opinion. I'm really sick of that. You know what's a difference of opinion? Is if you like DC and I like Marvel. That's a difference of opinion. If you say Drake is the greatest rapper of all time and I think it's Jay-Z, that's a difference of opinion. What's not considered a difference of opinion? If you think Black people are inherently inferior to white people, and I think the opposite, that is not a difference of opinion. That is you being a racist. And we have, unfortunately, put matters of humanity in the bucket of politics where it does not belong. See, it's not political to say that Black people are unqualified and inherently criminal. That is not a political belief. That is a white supremacist belief. Because you're ascribing a pathology to a people, to a construct of race, which is made up, by the way, and made up for the entire and sole purpose of being able to establish who's on top and who's on bottom. But that's a history lesson for another day. But if you don't believe that I am as human as you, that I deserve respect and dignity just because I'm here, that's not a difference of opinion, and we ain't got shit else to talk about. So this idea that Charlie Kirk, what it boiled down to with him was differing beliefs. It didn't boil down to that. It boiled down to the fact that he out loud and made a living off questioning the humanity and dignity and respect of others. That is how he made his living. And we can lie about it, but that's the truth. And he's not the only one that's making that living. So this is not a problem that started or was created by Charlie Kirk. This is part of our political ecosystem. Is that, yeah, people are able to make money off indignity. And so the fact that it's been trivialized, we're at a point we're so desensitized by the things that we see, by the things that are happening. We're so desensitized by it that we can't even have the guts to call something or understand what's a political belief and what is really someone not believing in people's dignity and humanity. Those are different things. And so as I'm reading all the stuff about and paying attention to how people are talking about and memorializing Charlie Kirk, I'm insulted by the fact that they think his beliefs are just about a difference of opinion. I can live with a difference of opinion. we can be friends over a difference of opinion. Okay. You like tomatoes? I don't. That's cool. You like your pizza this way? I don't. That's totally fine. Oh, I think because you're black that you don't deserve the same treatment. Gotta stop you right there. That's a different conversation. And so what I'm left with when it comes to remembering Charlie Kirk is I'm indifferent. I'm appalled by what happened, but I don't feel the need or the rush to celebrate, or not celebrate. That's not the word I'm looking for. I don't feel the need to mourn. I just have compassion for his family. That's all. It's like I have compassion for his family. And no, I don't. I think it's brutal that a bunch of students at Utah Valley State who were just there to engage in dialogue, and for some hear somebody whose opinions matter to them, that they had to see him murdered right in front of them. That's a tragedy that's going to play in their minds the rest of their lives. And especially in a climate where we have mass shootings, the level of fear that I'm sure went through their mind when they heard the shot, like they don't deserve to be exposed to that and to witness that. But that's the complicated thing about people, is that while we all may have a lot of skeletons and a lot of baggage, but people are far more complicated than that. And to try to sum up his legacy by saying he's just a good Christian dude who, was courageous in what he stood for, it's not telling the truth. And that's the thing we can't do, is lie to people. It's the lies are the reason why we're in the situation that we're in as a country. It's the reason that we are, is that there is an incredible amount of currency in lying to people, into finding those buttons to push and then gaslighting people over and over again. So of course the other component of this is that now the shooter, the suspect, I should say, from a media training perspective, that's the language we should use. So the suspect has been identified as Tyler Robinson, 22 years old. And of course, as you all know, in the wake of Charlie's murder, there was an incredible amount of angry discourse from the right, blaming the Democrats, blaming liberals, saying, you're the reason this happened. Only to find out, surprise, 22-year-old white dude, loved guns, raised by two parents, lived in a good home, dad is a minister, also a sheriff. Didn't check any of them boxes y'all thought he would check, did he? And what was wild to see is so many Republicans, like this is where I make a distinction, is when people talk about, who is creating the issues or who's stirring up the conversation, I look at who's actually starting the conversation. Are these just random people on the internet? This is a bunch of trolls. Like, who are these people? And so I'm very careful about people are saying, about using that whole narrative to push what other things are happening. But it was no question that prominent people, including the president, were pushing a certain narrative from the beginning after Charlie Kirk was murdered about who was responsible. Now, we have just seen a prominent political figure murdered. So you would think, just on a common sense level, just on an empathy level, just on wanting to, behind this tragic incident, wanting to turn the temperature down and bring people a little closer together, get everybody to see what the common ground was, or at least the lessons that we can learn from this. Do y'all think Donald Trump did that?
Radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy. Although they want men and women sports, they want transgender for everyone, they want open borders. The worst thing that...
What? How did he get from... Well, it was a lot there to digest. So it went from who to blame to trans people. Like, what? What are you talking about? They want everybody to be trans. Who is they? Who are you talking about? And that's what I mean about the lies and the gaslighting. It's just like, you're the president of the United States. You have to be better than that. You have to be. He is not. He never has been. So like, I don't even know what to start with that. But we saw a lot of that kind of rage in the aftermath, only to find out, like, wouldn't you know it, the person who appears to be responsible for this checks all y'all boxes, down to even wearing a Donald Trump Halloween costume. Checked every single one. Those of us with a little bit of deductive reasoning who have seen Law and Order a few times, we knew in Utah, one of the whitest states in America, Utah Valley State, the odds of this being a person of color was less than zero. Because if it was, that person probably would have stood out a little bit more among the populace, would have been found a little more immediately, right? And realize this suspect wasn't found by law enforcement. His father turned him in because he told his father what he did. And so, and you know, we also have to understand is that even within the right wing, much like with Democrats, there are fractions within the party. There are people who don't think Donald Trump is extreme enough. And now the right is going with this narrative that all the violence is coming in one direction, coming from the left. Like, are you serious? I mean, certainly we have seen political violence on both sides. But if I start recounting to y'all the incidents that have taken place, maybe the one we most experienced recently with the lawmakers in Minnesota, whole family and a dog murdered in their own home by a Trump supporter. January 6th. Who, remind me again, who was it that stormed the Capitol? And the immediate calls to violence from the right after this happened was like, I'm sorry, wait a minute. So this is part of the reason we can't turn the temperature down is because folks don't want to take responsibility for things. That's why we can't turn the temperature down. And when that erroneous report, let me tell you, the week in journalism, I mean, really, this era of journalism is truly awful, especially in this entire political moment. But this week, especially, sort of shows what happens when you have so much corporate media, so much concentrated media, and not enough people willing to ask critical questions. The Wall Street Journal jumped out there with a report that the shooter had trans ideology that was discovered on the gun or the bullets, one of the two. I don't even know what trans ideology is. I don't know what if they believe this story, what was it that was supposed to be on the gun and the bullets? Were they writing, I am trans? Was that the ideology? Like, I don't even know what trans ideology is, but that was their initial report. And Nancy Grace, who I cannot believe is an elected official, not Nancy Grace, I'm sorry, Nancy Mace. Let me be very clear. Sorry, Nancy Grace. You caught a straight air for no reason. Nancy Mace, the representative, who has exposed herself over and over again to be an absolutely despicable person. I mean, really she's resorted herself to not even being a lawmaker, but being somebody who goes around stalking bathrooms looking for trans people. That's her entire career right now. So Nancy Mace, after hearing or seeing that Wall Street Journal report, goes in on trans people because that was with one of our most recent mass shootings. That became a very popular narrative that all trans people are committing all the mass murders. It's them. Yeah, they're the reason. So maybe we should take all the guns away, or make sure trans people can't have access to guns. Oh, okay. Interesting. So now, upon hearing, now that the news is out, that the suspect, 22-year-old white dude from Utah, got every conservative value you could possibly think of. Boy, the way Nancy Mace slipped, man, that switch up was quick. Here's what she tweeted. After, again, this is literally not even 24 hours after she went in on the whole trans community over this erroneous Wall Street Journal report that has since been retracted. She then comes back and says, she tweets this: "We know Charlie Kirk would want us to pray for such an evil and lost individual like Tyler Robinson to find Jesus Christ. We will try to do the same." My, how them tables turn. So now that the shooter is white, you got prayers for him. But when you thought, stupidly, that the shooter was trans, all you had was vitriol, lock him up, do away with him, all the things. And another one of many reasons why in this moment we are a deeply unserious nation. And so the way I look at all of this is that, unfortunately, it has taken another tragedy, another life loss. And I'm going to say lives lost, because we have some students who lost their life in Colorado, and they become an afterthought in all of this madness. You have, again, the Yankees, moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. Where's the moment of silence for these kids that just lost their life? You have a moment of silence at the Packers-Washington game. Where's the moment of silence for these kids who just lost their life? The president hasn't said one single word about these children that had lost their life. And I do recall that it wasn't that long ago, after another school shooting, that Donald Trump told his constituents and America at large that they just need to get over it. So when we're talking about the kind of country we want to be, I think we've established the kind of country we are. We can't even get to the who we want to be part because we're so steeped in the who we are. And as much as we would like to think we have been better, we actually haven't been that much better. This is exactly who we are. And so through this entire ordeal, I would like to hope that we would find some way to reflect. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think we will. And, you know, what happened to Charlie Kirk should be a real timeout on a lot of levels, not just about checking our political discourse and checking what we say to each other. And I think the baton, not being biased, is firmly being carried by the right. They're the ones that continue to call for violence, continue to call for war. It's them. And rather than have a real conversation within their circles about the damage that this is inflicting, and especially when we now also know the shooter in Colorado, it's already been reported by the Denver Post and many other places that the shooter was somebody who had been radicalized online, who had a lot of anti-Semitic and white supremacist views. No shocker there. Kind of the same blueprint we keep seeing over and over. So as much as people would like to blame the trans people and blame other groups, what a lot of these things have in common is that they're all coming from very specific ideals. Very specific. Buffalo, very specific ideals. Dylan Roof, very specific ideals. Because where in a lot of these mass shooting, what you tend to find is the white supremacy as well. And so this should be an opportunity for us to kind of check ourselves. But unfortunately, that won't happen because we let it get this far. And I don't know now, I can't see what the bottom is because there's been so many incidents leading up to this where I've thought, surely this will be it. Surely this will be the one. When Sandy Hook happened, you could not have convinced me there was not going to be major legislation, bipartisan legislation that said, you know what? Children being killed, can't have that. Would have thought that would have been the case, and it wasn't the case. And we have had so many incidents, since then. And it seems like the loss of kids, the loss of adults, Las Vegas, like all these places, you would think at some point we would say, like, guys, this is kind of enough. And I'm not sitting up here advocating that we take away all guns because that's frankly not possible, nor is it realistic. Like, we can't take away all guns, but we just shouldn't make them so easy to get for everybody. You shouldn't just be able to turn 18 and go get a gun, and that's it. And especially in certain states where you have to do the bare minimum to get your hand on a firearm, it's like, no, we shouldn't have to do that. And so, we have to understand that even with great freedom comes great responsibility, and limits are in place for a reason. And yet there isn't a bottom. So I know there are people on the left who are thinking that, well, maybe because, quote, one of their own has been killed in Charlie Kirk, that will get people to come to some kind of level of, humanity or their senses. And I'm like, it won't. If kids wasn't, why would Charlie Kirk be it? Especially when Charlie Kirk out of his own mouth said that part of upholding Second Amendment rights is that some people just got to die. So we can't see a bottom in this nation. And because we can't see one, I don't really have a whole lot of hope or optimism that we'll be able to pull ourselves out of whatever it is that we're in right now. And that, to me, is the alarming thing, is that I don't foresee a situation where things get better. I see a situation where things get worse. And so, I don't know if the worse, that means that, like, if you're in political spaces, if you're a pundit, like, of course, I think all of the people in those spaces, regardless of your political beliefs, like, you have to be careful in those spaces anyway. Like, I know when I do speaking engagements, I have security and that kind of thing. Like, we all have to be cognizant and aware. So, but what I am saying is that our inability to see the humanity in each other has been severely compromised to the point where I'm not sure how much of that exists. And online culture and social media is not helping. In fact, I noticed this over the last few days, and I don't know if you all noticed this in terms of what was in, what was being flooded in the algorithm. And I try to be very mindful of what's in my algorithm. Is that, like, you suddenly saw, and some other of my friends said this, like, you suddenly saw more videos of Black people attacking white people. I saw a number of fake posts being circulated about prominent Black athletes, saying that they would pay for the funeral services of Charlie Kirk and his college education of his kids. These were fake posts. And I have to wonder, like, what is the point of this information? Well, I know the point of the information, so I'm not going to be naive about it. But when you have, say, someone like Elon Musk, not long after Charlie Kirk is killed, basically declaring war on the left, like, all of those things, we've already paid severe enough prices, but I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough for people to realize that, like, there is real danger in what's happening. And so now when you see, when you have, say, someone like Elon Musk, not long after Charlie Kirk is killed, basically declaring war on the left, like, all of those things, we've already paid severe enough prices, but I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough for people to realize that, like, there is real danger in what's happening. And so now when you see like what happened in Colorado, or even this young man who murdered Charlie Kirk, they're being radicalized by information. Like, it's not taking anything physical. It's like they're being radicalized by information. And that should be an extra warning to all of us that are in these platforms to be cognizant about what we say. Accountability is important. History is important. All these things are important. But when you start weaponizing people to strike, or weaponizing people to the point where they feel like their only recourse is to do something violent, then you need to check what you're saying. And so as much as I certainly believe in free speech has its limitations and it has its responsibilities. So unless you're willing to carry those, then you shouldn't be in the public square influencing people in a particular way. And so as much as I want this to be a learning and a teachable moment and a way for us to move forward differently, move differently, I don't see it. I do not see it at all. And so unfortunately, I can't say that there will be more Charlie Kirks, because that'd be a pretty heinous prediction. I can say that I think that this whole climate of political violence will unfortunately only continue. And sadly, it will get worse. And if we don't start being real with ourselves as a nation, we are never going to live up to what the brochure said. Never. All right. I want to thank you all for joining me on this bonus episode of SPOLITICS Live, as I should call it. Apologies for rambling all over the place, but sometimes you just got to speak from whatever's in your heart. And again, what happened to Charlie Kirk was really devastating. And it was, one of those days and one of those moments that you're going to unfortunately already remember. I hope the fact that this suspect has been caught gives his family and friends some level of peace and solace. I don't know that it will. I don't blame him if it doesn't, because it doesn't bring back a whole person. But beyond all that, I think as Americans, we really need to take this time to check ourselves. I just wonder if we have the courage to do it. All right, that's it for now. You all can, of course, access SPOLITICS by going to iHeart. I'll also, on my YouTube page, post the full video interviews as well, so you can always catch those. And SPOLITICS is available not just on iHeart, but wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, wherever it is you access podcasts, that is where it's available. So make sure you check it out. And until then, remember what is the slogan of SPOLITICS, that sports and politics don't just mix, they matter. See y'all soon.